What's the strangest coincidence you've ever personally experienced? I lived in an apartment in San Francisco for several years. I moved out, and a couple of years later, I met a girl. We started dating. She lived in the exact same apartment that I had lived in, so I moved back into that apartment. We have been married for 25 years. I dialed my mom on my mobile when I was on public transport and accidentally swapped two numbers around. The person I called was on the same carriage. Your like and subscription will really help my channel. I live in Missouri, but was in London about 15 years ago because our college marching band was marching in their New Year's Day parade. I was marching on the left flank and decided to stop looking straight ahead like you're supposed to because I figured I'd never get a chance to enjoy this particular scenery again. If I hadn't been on the left-hand side and glanced to my left in that exact moment, I never would have seen my cousin, also from Missouri, and who I hadn't seen since I was a little kid, standing within an arm's reach with a shocked and confused look on her face. A lot of things had to coincidentally align for me to stroll past her on that particular street on the other side of the planet. I was at a bar in Dallas on St. Patrick's Day, and I asked a guy about 30 years older than me if I could borrow a lighter. He said something back in a Dublin accent. I asked if he was from Dublin, and he said yes. I jokingly said, "I wonder if you know my dad, he is from Dublin." And the guy, of course, says no way, it is a huge city. But my grandfather owned a building with his name on it real big, so I asked if he knew of the street it was on. Then I asked him if he knew my grandfather's building. Turns out he used to work for my grandfather and lived with my uncle and was in fact friends with my dad. Small world. Played an MMO for years, and after about 5 years in, I got to talking to a guy who was in my guild that entire time. Eventually found out it was in the same county, then city. Then he mentioned one night he was going to walk down the street to the name of a bar I frequented. Turns out we both had been going to the same bar for quite some time. We didn't recognize each other, but chances are we were probably there at the same time on several occasions. My dad lives in a national park here in Australia. It's farmland that's grandfathered in. One day we were sitting out on the deck when we saw a hang glider come down halfway down the valley, and it didn't look like a nice landing. We better see if he's all right. They don't land anywhere near here. So we get in the car, drive for about 10 minutes to reach the spot. We head over to the guy who is standing by a very damaged glider. The pilot is staring at us incredulously. He stammers, "Jack, is that you?" My dad, who hasn't seen his childhood friend for 35 years, shouts, "Tim, is that you?" They both grew up in Greymouth, New Zealand, found each other randomly after a glider crash in New South Wales, Australia. This guy I went to grade school and high school with, an acquaintance at best. I've seen him in 5 different locations in different countries throughout the last 15 years. Disney World when I was a kid, some beach bar in Thailand, the Bean in Chicago, a pub in Budapest, a library in San Jose, Costa Rica. We've become friends due our love of traveling, but neither of us post on social media, and neither of us communicated with each other our plans to travel. We never talked outside of the random meetings. Now if I see him, it's like the world wants us to have a beer together. When I was in college in Texas, back in the early 90s, I took a summer trip to England. My flight left on the last day of classes. I had an English paper due that day, and the professor insisted that it was due in his box by noon. Of course I procrastinated and didn't turn it in until 1 o'clock, and mine was the only paper in there. I was sure I had screwed up, but I had to go catch my flight. I got to London, and the next day, I was on the tube, telling my friend that I was sure I had failed the class because the professor never got my paper. "It's going to be hanging over my head the entire trip," I said. "There's no way I'll know if he got my paper." We arrived at our stop, the doors opened, and there was my professor waiting for the train. "Professor, did you get my paper?" Yes I did." "Great, thanks," I said, and went on to enjoy my holiday. Went for coffee with a potential new housemate with 2 other confirmed housemates. Get chatting to the potential new housemate and find out she's from Spain. One of my confirmed housemates is from Spain and asked where she was from. Long story short, they're from the same town, went to the same school, and live streets away from each other. Further conversation reveals that they were actually part of the same group of friends when they were really young kids, and their parents used to hang out together, and they both coincidentally left Spain at the same time to go to the same not very well-known university and ended up living together. As a kid, my parents took me to Butlins one year, an all-inclusive kid-friendly holiday park in the UK, and got on really well with the neighbors. The next year we went to Spain, and the same family was in the same hotel for the same 2 weeks as us. The next year we went to a different Butlins, and our first week there was the same family's second week. My parents and their parents made plans to meet up again the next year, and we never saw each other again. New video every day. Your like and subscription will really help my channel.